Hi everyone, my name is Eisha Hussain and I'm an independent journalist based in New Delhi, India. I write primarily on law and policy through a lens of social justice, and a lot of my work is centered around gender. Um, Unfortunately, would be unable to join the discussion live as much as I would have liked to due to the time zone difference. But I'm here to share my understanding of what the socio-political realities for many of us um, are and will be in the aftermath of the 22nd January consecration of the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya. And so I'm going to jump right into it. For anyone who wants to understand the event and its significance, it is very important to understand that this is um, a watershed moment in this is a watershed moment for a lot of us, because it is a tacit proclamation of the kind of an imagined Hindutva nation that the current ruling party had promised when it came to power in 2014. um, in fact, if we are to see the electoral manifestos of BJP from the 2014 and the 2019 election, we find that the Ram Mandir was promised to its voters, and so that is why it's important to also understand that the event itself is entirely political, given that India is gearing up for elections, for the 2024 elections. And so I'm also going to sort of add that this incident cannot be seen in isolation, and in fact it must be seen as the kind of a popular narrative that is gaining ground in India since 2014. And this is not to deny the fact that the seeds for this event and this popular sentiment was laid many years back. In fact, the very foundation of the temple that we see right now was laid on the blood of the thousands that were slain before and after the demolition of the Babri Masjid. It is also important to understand that the demolition of the Babri Masjid and the construction of the Ram Mandir in its place is actually symbolic in more than one ways. It is the erasure of the cultural diversity and the heritage that India has held for so many years, and that is primarily because it does not fit the larger imagination of a Hindu Rashtra. It is also in complete violation and disregard of the Indian constitution that actually establishes India as a secular state, where we cannot have the government interfering in with the practice of religion. And the government cannot sort of um, exhibit any allegiance towards a religion. So it is in complete disregard of the principle of secularism. And lastly, it is also a message to the minorities living in India, especially the Muslim minority community, that they are not a part of the India that is being imagined by the masses and the leaders. The event itself is actually a part of the larger project, as I mentioned earlier, to erase the cultural diversity of India, the shared cultural heritage. And there we've seen many cases. We've seen ever since the BJP has come to power, they have undertaken the project of rewriting history in textbooks, when it comes to renaming places, when it also comes to, for instance, the the raising down of historical structures, be it any dargah or any mosque. We've also seen many Hindu right-wing leaders lay claims on mosques. One of the cases will be the Gyanvapi mosque. In fact, the erasure that I've been referring to of the cultural heritage is not just limited to monuments or places of worship that are significant to the Muslim community, but it has also been happening, for instance, with the Christian community. We've seen many instances of churches being vandalized, of people inside churches being attacked. In fact, on the 22nd of January, we saw visuals emerging from Madhya Pradesh where members of a right-wing Hindu group scaled the walls of the church and hoisted a saffron flag. And again, this is symbolic of the dominance of the Hindutva dominance in India. What we must also sort of understand is that one of the most dangerous things that the current regime has succeeded in doing is conflating religion with the concept of nation and the concept of state. And so what has essentially happened in India is that any opposition to the state and its policies is seen as opposition to the Hindu religion, which is not the case. Which is why you also see that any dissenting voices are heavily cracked down upon, and activists are being sent behind the bars under UAPA, left, right, and center. So it's basically setting a really dangerous precedent. As a media student, I would also like to point out the fact that the kind of hate politics that we're seeing on ground in India is also mirroring itself online. And we've seen multiple cases of Muslims being dehumanized and objectified, especially in the case of Muslim women, where you had these platforms called the Sulli Deal and the Bully Bhai apps. You've had cases of chat rooms on Clubhouse where Muslim women's bodies are discussed. And so this kind of hatred that starts with dehumanizing a community has really dangerous consequences, as we've seen across the world, and we are continuing to see across the world. So when my piece on my experience as a young Muslim woman in India in the build-up to the 22nd January event came out, I received a lot of hate comments and a lot of hate messages. A very peculiar thing that I noticed about these messages and these comments was that it was very difficult for me and others to differentiate between who a troll was and who a normal, online user was, because you see that more and more online users are now using the kind of language that initially we saw only the BJP trolls use. This is also an attempt at this kind of threatening language, this kind of shaming that happens, is an attempt to silence any opposition or anything that does not fit the larger narrative of the ruling party. And lastly, I would like to add that the kind of narrative that we are seeing, which is being used to justify the demolition of Babri and the construction of the temple in its place, at the center of that narrative lies an unfounded claim that Babur built the Babri Masjid after demolishing the temple. And so this evoking of of a conflict from the past that we're unsure of is really dangerous in a modern nation state setup. This is unlike what we have seen, and it's going to have very far-reaching impact for the future of India, for the socio-political fabric of India. And so it is important to, in whatever capacity possible, to counter this narrative, to kind of counter the misinformation that we're seeing in India. Yeah, that's what I feel and understand from what is happening in India currently, and in the aftermath of the 22nd January event.